Thank you very much. Nathuji Solanki, ladies and gentlemen. He comes from an unbroken tradition of 13 generations of Nagara players all the way from Pushkar. And it's become not just a tradition, but for us a sacred ritual for Nathuji to start the festival here every year. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathu Solanki. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, former Governor of Rajasthan, Margaret Alva, on behalf of all of my colleagues, and Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple, welcome to the 11th Zee Jaipur Literature Festival. Who would have believed that the vision of preserving built heritage by two pioneers, John and Faith Singh, would lead to a literary revolution across South Asia. At the last count, 123 literature festivals have sprung up, creating platforms for authors to speak, to write, and to be able to make sense of the word. Around the world, cultural heritage is at risk because of increased violence, be it the ISIS or Daesh, who try and destroy the very fabric on which societies and nations have been built on, which is our culture. We all know that culture and heritage are powerful drivers of economic development, reviving the fortunes of cities, bringing in tourists and creating livelihoods, creating jobs, and providing platforms, most importantly, for expression and making benchmarks of excellence. It is crucial in our times that citizens absolutely understand and appreciate the importance of culture, a place where they can come and discuss, debate, and most importantly, create a sense of dissent. In any democratic society, in any part of the world, more so today, it is very important to create these areas and platforms because these are the pressure valves that allow steam to be let loose by so many people who want their voice heard. Dissent is a powerful tool, but it's also a dangerous tool. As long as dissent is expressed within the confines of law and the constitution of the land, it is safe. Writers write not necessarily only to entertain. Writers write because they have a volition to write and to make sense of our complex world. We must ensure that they have the freedom to do so. The freedom to do so in spite of the fact that fringe groups may not agree with every word that they write or every film that they make or every painting that they paint. For us here at the festival, it is paramount and important to ensure that knowledge is accessible to all. The reason when we set up the festival that we created this as a free platform is that we realized in countries where there is a great deal of inequity, be it in America, Australia, across Africa, and India, the only way to transform societies is through knowledge and through culture. And if you're able to make knowledge accessible to those who don't otherwise have access to it, that in itself is a great way of bringing about change. One of the stories that I always love to tell is that 4 years into the festival, because when we started, we were so clear that we wanted this to be a city festival, a festival for all kinds of people. We had set up security for the first time, and I was standing out here in the circle as I do in the morning to receive our guests. and the security stopped this man and this boy who walked through the arches of Dickey Palace. And because I was there, I went up and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "I sleep on the pavement in front of the SMS hospital down the road. And I know that I will never be able to send my son to school, nor be able to afford to buy a book for him to read. But I thought perhaps if he hears a story, it will change his life forever." It is that magic of storytelling that we try and recreate here. Our co-festival directors, Namita, Gokhale, and William Dalrymple, through the year, bring together this incredible array of fascinating writers and speakers from across the world and across India to celebrate the word, to celebrate literature, and to celebrate ideas. May I please welcome Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple.
One of the, we all have our stories that we retell year after year. Sanjoy's chap at SMS Hospital. I always like to tell a story of the first event we had here in Diggy, in one of the moments before the festival became a fully fledged festival. And we put back the dust sheets. Jyotika and Rao Pratap dusted the place down, and we waited for people to come, and no one came. And just about half an hour after the scheduled starting time, we suddenly had an influx of Japanese people who came and sat down, 16 of them, and filled the room up. They were actually looking for Amer Palace. But they stayed. Since then, it's grown a little. We are now formally, I think, the largest literary festival in the world. And at a time when people complain that attention spans are shrinking, when interest in books and literature and scholarship is shrinking and giving way to the inanities of social media and quick fix pleasures of Netflix and so on, this festival, which now has swelled past 1/3 of a million footfalls last year, heading for a sort of a Glastonbury or Woodstock of books, is evidence of the extraordinary appetite people still have for serious writing and real literature. Sanjoy mentioned the hundreds of other literary festivals which have sprung up across the globe. But there are, I think, only 5 or 6 which managed to bring in the Nobel Prize winners, the incredible literary stars of the year. Hay-on-Wye, Cheltenham, Adelaide, Sydney, the New Yorker Festival. But we are the only one which is completely free and open to all. Today, for the opening session, you'll see reserved stickers on the first 4 rows here. Those stickers will disappear after this. And from this point on, there is no VIP anything. It's everyone in for their own... if you get there first, you get the front seat. And anyone can walk in. And for 5 days, we set up a little mini university. The great minds of Harvard and Oxbridge, mixing with Sahitya Academy Prize winners, Rajasthani poets, particle physicists, great playwrights, biographers, writers on nature and travel, poets. We have a particularly rich selection of poets this year. So I just hand on to my amazing co-director, but thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a good time.
आप सबको जयपुर, आप सबको यहाँ हमारे जी जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल में स्वागत है। यह साहित्य उत्सव हमारे समाज ही की तरह हमारे कल, आज और कल का कथानक है। भारत की संस्कृति हमेशा ही त्रिकालमुखी रही है, जहाँ आधुनिक और प्राचीन कहानियाँ साथ चलती हैं। 2 दिन पहले बसंत पंचमी का त्यौहार मनाया गया। सरस्वती का आशीर्वाद हमेशा हमारे साथ रहा है। आज जब साहित्य उत्सव के 11वें आयोजन शुरू हो रहे हैं, हमारे पास बीते 10 सालों का गहरा संतोष है। संतोष इस बात का है कि अपने यहाँ के साहित्य से कटते जा रहे समाज को हम इन 10 सालों में मुख्य धारा की चर्चा का विषय बना सके हैं। देश के बहुत सारे हिस्सों में साहित्य से सिमटते जा रहे वातावरण को हमने एक तरफ से सारी दुनिया से जोड़ा है, तो दूसरी तरफ से अपने यहाँ की बोलियाँ और भाषाओं की छुपी हुई समृद्धि को भी लगातार सामने ला रहे हैं। अब साहित्य से जुड़े तमाम तरह के आयोजन देश भर में, तमाम राज्यों में, अनेक छोटे बड़े शहरों में हो रहे हैं। लिखने पढ़ने की संस्कृति का यह विस्तार भविष्य के समाज के लिए अच्छा है। इस विकास और विस्तार में हमारी थोड़ी सी प्रेरक भूमिका रही है, इसका हमें बहुत संतोष है। पिछले सालों में मैंने इस उत्सव की उपमा कभी कथा सरित सागर से दी थी, तो कभी साहित्य के कुंभ से, या फिर बरगद के पेड़ से। अब लग रहा है ये हर रूप में एक तरह से साहित्य संगम बन गया है। इस 11वीं कड़ी में हम आपको अपने 15 भारतीय भाषाओं पेश करेंगे। 20 अंतर्राष्ट्रीय देश और भाषाओं के प्रतिनिधि हमारे साथ शामिल हैं। इस देश की तरह ये साहित्य उत्सव भी युवा पीढ़ी के साथ ही जुड़ा है। पिछले साल हमारे श्रोताओं में 60% लोग 25 साल से कम उम्र के थे। युवा पीढ़ी का और मेरे हम उम्र लेखकों का और साहित्य प्रेमियों का सबका फिर से स्वागत है। हर साल मैं ये पंक्तियाँ आपको और अपने आप को सुनाती हूँ, क्योंकि इनमें हमारा विश्वास और हमारा आधार बसा है। सरस्वती के भंडार की बड़ी अनोखी बात, ज्यों बाँटे त्यों त्यों बढ़े, बिन बाँटे घट जात। थैंक यू। अब मैं 2 शब्द अंग्रेजी में भी कहूँगी। Friends, lovers of literature, welcome once again to the Z Jaipur Literature Festival. Just 2 days ago, we celebrated Vasant Panchami, the festival that marks the beginning of spring, dedicated to Saraswati, goddess of knowledge. Saraswati's blessings are on our festival, on this gathering of writers and readers that has come to be known as the Mahakumbh of literature. On our 11th edition, my thoughts return to all those years that have gone before. We've grown in size and stature, but we've managed to retain the spontaneity, the democratic spirit, and the rigorous programming that remain our authentic hallmark. This magical mystery tour has been meticulously curated with my co-director, William Dalrymple, to transport you to the world of books and ideas, dialogue and debate. Our festival is a place where India thinks aloud, argues with itself, listens to itself. It's a plural, diverse, multilingual, with 15 languages from India, 20 international languages, and different literary backgrounds. It has been said that India is a python with its tail in the medieval past and its head in the next century. The country and culture we inhabit, as indeed most places on our planet, are located in very different pasts, playing out in a simultaneous present. Our festival is a precious space for these multiple narratives and short stories. From women's series of ancient Vedic texts to Instagram poets, from greats of Urdu poetry to the compelling lyrics of Bollywood, poets from different continents, cultures gather here. We are delighted to have Pico Iyer, who will be delivering the keynote address. We have Helen Fielding, author of the Bridget Jones Diaries. We have a session celebrating the Beatles and their visit to Rishikesh, and a delightful session on P.G. Wodehouse. We have the legacy of Dr. Ambedkar. We have the waters of contention between China and India. The range of powerful Hindi writers from the next generation, which I will not list out. Micro-communities and literatures of India, including the Chinese diaspora and the Chinese community here, the Jewish Indian community. So all these are sessions I urge you to mark them on your calendar and make sure you get as many of them as you can take in. Thank you, all of you, again.
None of this would be possible, and no festival can really be a free festival unless it has the support of so many of our sponsors, well-wishers, and collaborators. Our main festival sponsor is Z, and we're delighted to have with us from the Z family a person who really passionately championed the cause of this particular festival. Ladies and gentlemen, Shreyasi Goenka. While Shreyasi is coming up, you know, when I was standing in the morning out there, two people came and met me. There was a lady who had pancreatic cancer, and there's a general who had a stroke. And they both said, the reason why we've got better is because we wanted to come once again to the Z Jaipur Literature Festival. So we wish them well on behalf of all of us. Shreyasi.
Thank you, Sanjoy. Year after year, I'm coerced to come up in front of everyone to speak. I think I'm getting better at it every year, though. Good morning. Today, as I stand in front of you all, welcoming you to the 11th edition of the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, I'm heartened and overwhelmed at the support we have received. The government of Rajasthan pulls out all stops for us. The authors, who graciously share with us their time and their ideas. The sponsors without whose generosity we wouldn't be standing here. And all of you who make this festival what it is, the greatest literary event on earth. Before I proceed, a few thank yous are in order. The Honorable Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Srimati Vasundhara Raje ji, your presence today is sorely missed. The police forces for their tireless efforts to make sure that our venue remains a safe haven. The parents who send their young ones year after year for trusting that they will find their time here enriching. It delights us to note that the number of children attending has been growing steadily each year. This is the 5th year of Z's association with the Jaipur Literature Festival, and with each year, our commitment to what it stands for has strengthened. It is a matter of immense pride that the Z Jaipur Literature Festival made its mark last year in the US and the UK and was overwhelmingly received. However, at Z we realize that our responsibility extends beyond promoting literature. In December last year, we were instrumental in unveiling a unique initiative, the Sculpture Park at Madhavendra Palace that is located within the Nahargarh Fort, a collaboration between the Government of Rajasthan and the Saath Saath Arts Foundation. Here, on view is a delightful juxtaposition of sculptures by masters of contemporary art within the confines of a beautifully restored medieval palace. I urge you to visit it. It is an experience like no other. At Z, we believe that social responsibility means leading by example. Through our initiative, Z is Green, we aim to be India's first media company to be carbon neutral by the year 2019. In addition to this, H2O Together, a campaign we will soon launch, will aim to generate nationwide awareness on water conservation. I do believe that it is the responsibility of each individual and corporation to aid the government in their endeavor to promote, preserve, and propagate the rich and diversified culture that India has been endowed with. I will end here with something George Washington supposedly said. There is nothing which can better deserve your patronage than the promotion of science, art, and literature. Knowledge in every country is the surest basis of public happiness. Thank you all for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day. Jai Hind.
As many of you know, the festival began here 10 years ago in the Darbar Hall, which all of us maintain is really the Grabgriya, the central point of energy. And the wonderful Diggi family, whose home this is, in whose hearts we reside, and I think all of Jaipur and Rajasthan resides. We'd like to thank Ram Pratap and Jyotika of Diggi and invite them on stage to come and light the lamp. Ram Pratap, Jyotika. May I also invite William, Namita, Piku. Will you please join us on stage? Mr. O.P. Kaul, the General Manager of Corporate Communication, Bank of Baroda, Jagdish Chandra, Uttam Tibariwal of AU, Rima Huja of the Jaipur Virasat Festival, and former Governor Margaret Alva. Margaret, please join us on stage. Please, come. Arushi Asgaonkar, one of our youngest performers here at the festival. Arushi opened our Sacred Music Festival earlier this year, and we just fell in love with her incredible energy, her confidence, and her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, Arushi Asgaonkar. I'm now going to hand over the stage to our very own Catriona, who's returned to the front lawn. Last year, she had an unfortunate family issue, so she wasn't able to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, Catriona.
Thank you, Sanjoy. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're all very, very welcome here to the Bank of Baroda front lawn. Thank you to Shreyasi Goenka, and also to the musicians who performed this morning, Meeta Pandit, Natulal Solanki's group, Arushi Asgokar, and the musicians and dancers outside, Shopat Julia, the Assam musicians and dancers, and the Gair dancers. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the keynote address this morning, Charting a World Without Borders. Pico Iyer is the author of 2 novels and 10 works of non-fiction, most recently The Man Within My Head and The Art of Stillness. His books have been translated into 23 languages, and his TED Talks have received more than 7 million views. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming to the stage Pico Iyer.
About 1,000 years ago, in the 1970s, I devoted 8 years of my life to studying nothing but literature, and more English literature. Not a single hour of history or politics or science or languages, just English literature. And in England in those days, studying English literature meant studying Chaucer and Beowulf and an Anglo-Saxon poem called The Wanderer. Not a single text after 1832, and even American literature was so beyond the pale it was relegated to a special paper. And I don't think many of us then could have imagined that within just 5 years, English literature was being made by writers whose names most English people couldn't spell. Coetzee and Ishiguro and Okri and Ghosh. And the Booker Prize almost never went to somebody who looked like a traditional Englishman. Suddenly, papadums and Bollywood jingles and Nigerian spirits and Jamaican patois were filling our pages, and suddenly our books were crackling with strange gods and fresh spices, new melodies. Salman Rushdie reminded us how Britain could actually be liberated by India and by its other former colonies. Carol Phillips gave us Liverpool and the Caribbean from the other end of the telescope. Timothy Moe published a 271-page novel set in contemporary London with not a single white-skinned character. What all these writers were doing was not just throwing open the doors and the windows of the dusty Havisham house of literature, but bringing us new stories, new histories, and new ways of telling stories. Suddenly, the world that we thought we knew was turned on its head. And when, for example, Arundhati Roy published The God of Small Things, it was really as if a fresher, darker Eve was let loose in the garden and renaming all the flowers. And as all of you know, what happened in Britain soon was speeding across Canada, and finally even caught up with the United States. So these days, the defining American writers, again, have names that most American readers can't pronounce. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Edwige Dontika, Jhumpa Lahiri, Yiyun Lee, to name just a few of the younger female writers. And every one of them, by bringing their parents' culture into their new adoptive culture, was really counting the costs of migration and exploring its possibilities. To me, it's an astonishing thing to think that the greatest travel writer in North America, and the one who has written most searchingly and honestly and passionately about identity, was actually literally the most powerful person on the planet for 8 years. Barack Obama famously saw the world differently because he couldn't think in terms of black or white. He is and was black and white. He's from Kansas and Kenya and Indonesia and Hawaii, blessed with a Buddhist half-sister and a Chinese-Canadian brother-in-law. And all of that really seemed perfectly in sync with a world in which the average person you meet on the streets of Toronto today is what used to be known as a foreigner, somebody born in a very different country. A world where, by national consent, the dish of Britain now is chicken tikka masala. And a world where probably the most popular writer of nonfiction in English, Malcolm Gladwell, and one of the most radical writers of fiction, Zadie Smith, are both Jamaican and English, partly New World and partly Old. Really, a new kind of writer is coming up to speak for and to a new kind of reader. And if London was the capital of 19th century writing in English, and New York of 20th, I think there can be no doubt that the capital of 21st century writing in English so far is Mumbai. Good, some proud Mumbaikas in this audience. I was actually in Washington, D.C. a few years ago, and I met up with a writer friend. And within 5 minutes, we had come up with 14 great and enduring works that all came from his hometown and my parents' hometown, the Big Mango. So really, it's no surprise that if I want to meet my British publisher or my favorite bookseller from Seattle or my graduate school classmate who now lives in Milan, the only place where I can expect to see them is here at the most glamorous and romantic lit fest of them all, in Jaipur. And as you all know, and as Willie was saying, across the West, publishers are running scared, bookshops are closing, magazines are dwindling. Every time I come back here to the world's largest democracy, it's to find there are new publishing houses, new magazines, new readers eager to talk about page 961 of A Suitable Boy. And this is essential to remember because you all know that many people feel threatened by this rainbow flood that I've been describing and would love to return to a simpler world of us versus them. We've all witnessed, sometimes painfully, a rise in nationalism and brutal tribalism across the planet in the last year or two. And it's as if the countryside is rising up against the city, the desperate are rising up against what they see as the privileged, and the past is rising up against the future. And in the context of this struggle, literature is indispensable precisely because it's the voice of the individual. And the individual is more many-homed and plural than ever. She knows she can't be pushed into a single box or category. She knows that emotions can't be reduced to simplicities. And she knows that the more she is productively mixed up, coming from everywhere, the more everywhere is productively mixed up. Every time a woman from Pakistan falls in love with a man from Sweden, the little girl who arises out of their union will fling another black or white distinction out the window. 30 years ago, this very season, I published my first book. And I took great pains to make sure that to acknowledge this reverse of history's tides, the final chapter was entitled The Empire Strikes Back. And 25 years ago, this very week, with the help of colleagues in Time magazine, I published an essay about the literary consequences of this called The Empire Writes Back. But really, I don't think any of us then imagined that the flow across borders, in good ways and in bad, would explode so dramatically, so very quickly, and throw up so many new, fresh possibilities. You all, I think, know really the classic novel that's also celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, The English Patient. And you remember how the map maker at its center almost dies because he's not English. He's tended to by a nurse who has this wonderful name, Hannah, that could be Japanese or Czech or what in fact it is, Canadian. She's also sometimes called Pico. The other Canadian who arrives in their house has this quintessentially Italian name, Caravaggio, but he's lost both his thumbs to an Italian soldier. And the one character who is risking his life every day on behalf of the British Army to defuse bombs is an Indian and a Sikh nicknamed after a salty English fish. So in the middle of World War II, when people are dying because of the religions they represent or the passports they carry, these four characters assemble in a shattered convent. And they sing into being a new world in which really nobody knows where anybody comes from and nobody cares. A world of map makers and diffusers of bombs and nurses and, for good measure, thieves. We are all communal histories, communal books, Michael Ondaatje writes, and I think that's partly because he and his siblings were growing up on 4 different continents. When I visit campuses these days, I sometimes hear the term cultural appropriation. And to me, it really sounds like what I've always understood to be literature. For me, the whole point of writing is to dream your way over the garden fence and into somebody other than yourself. And by doing so, to see how much of the other is inside yourself. When Washington, for example, began waging war on Islam at the end of the last century, I knew that my responsibility as an American resident of Hindu origin was to try to save up my time and money and to go and visit Beirut and Syria and Iran and Oman and Yemen and Jordan and Jerusalem, as I did, and even more important, to call upon my greatest resource, my imagination, to try to see how the world looked through the eyes of my Islamic neighbors. And so I think, like many writers everywhere, I spent 4 years steeping myself in the great Islamic tradition and then published a 370-page novel in which I was aspiring, at least, to guess how the world looked to my Islamic friends. To believe in cultural appropriation can often, I think, be almost to give up on the possibility of understanding somebody different from yourself. It can be a very dark form of nationalism. Suddenly, Shakespeare's no longer allowed to write in the voice of Othello, or Desdemona, or Iago. Suddenly, Michael Ondaatje is no longer permitted to try to imagine himself as a woman, or as a Hungarian count, or as a Sikh. Suddenly, Toni Morrison is no longer allowed to try to see the world as it might look through the eyes of George W. Bush. We all know, I think, keenly, as Kazuo Ishiguro said in his Nobel lecture last month, that our global neighborhood is grievously wounded. Poets are ever more being eclipsed by novelists, and novelists more and more by multimedia devices, weapons of mass distraction. England no longer rules the waves, but English too often does. And those who write in India's hundreds of other languages or languages across the globe don't receive the recognition they deserve. And in the land of deracination, which I've been describing, sadly, the divisions are as acute as in every other country between the disadvantaged many and most of us here in Jaipur, the privileged few. Those who are crossing borders are crossing not by choice, but by necessity. But at this time when so many of us are really concerned about walls and travel bans, literature is more indispensable than ever, precisely because the imagination is no respecter of boundaries or fences. The blessing of writing is to speak over the wall and under the wall and around the wall. Every time I read one of Elizabeth Strout's remarkable novels, I understand a little better why some of my neighbors voted for Donald Trump. Every time I lose myself in Adam Johnson's dazzling Orphan Master's Son, I can begin to see better what it might be like to live in North Korea. Every time I devour one of Akio Sharma's beautiful novels, I'm taken into precisely those hearts that usually I'm too scared to visit. In the course of my previous visits to this festival, I've been lucky enough to hear a Tibetan Lama, an Iranian novelist who's really redrawing the maps of migration, and maybe most important of all, some of those Indian writers of nonfiction who have seized the classical colonial form of travel writing and turned it on its head, everywhere from the Congo to Sri Lanka. So even as the world is moving ever more towards hard and fast distinctions, literature revels in the soft and the slow. Literature tells us that what unites us is much more important than what separates us, and that's how your story becomes mine. Literature tells us that much better than waging war is to hold festivals such as this, precisely because a city such as Jaipur is a tapestry, woven of myriad different traditions and cultures. And literature recalls to us that our drone attacks will never deter terrorists. Our guns are never going to erase nationalists. But our words and our ideas, our rigorous imaginings, can take us a little bit past simplicities and remind us that ultimately we change the world by changing how we think of it, by changing how we dream of it. So I'd like to end really just by offering heartfelt thanks to the city of Jaipur, to the organizers of this festival, and to every reader and writer here who dares to imagine that the single most important state of all is actually the state over which we have the greatest control, the state of our imaginations. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Pico Iyer. So the next session will start at 11:15 here at the Bank of Baroda front lawn. It will be Magical Mystery Tour, The Beatles in India, with Philip Norman in conversation with Ajoy Bose. That's at 11:15. The sessions are starting at 11:15 across the venues. One second.
As you all make your way out to the different venues, just a quick reminder that this year, the new venue that we have is if you leave Diggy and head to the main road, Samvad is on the right.